Hi, this is Jeff with Michigan Theater and Film Talk. This week, we're talking with professional actor and director Tobin Hissong. In this half, we'll be talking about short, fat Draculas, starting over at 50, and finding connections on stage, as well as much, much more, so stay tuned.
Okay. I was a short, fat Dracula. I felt that I had learned as much as I could in community theater.
I'm like a cat who gets out
Yes.
of the house and is like, I'm free! Ah!
No one wants to see that on stage. Never. And the answer to that is to play it honest.
Hello and welcome to Michigan Theater and Film Talk. This is a show dedicated to highlighting Michigan theater and film artists from all over the state. If you are new, go ahead and like my page on Facebook, which is Michigan Michael Chekhov Classes-M2C2, and you will be the first to know about videos and what we're up to. And also, if you are on YouTube, you can go to @MichiganChekhov, which is two words. The last one is spelled CHEKHOV, and you will be the first to know about videos just like this. Also, if you're a podcast person, you can get this on any platform where you get your podcasts by searching for Michigan Theater and Film Talk, and you will be in the know. My guest today is Tobin Hissong, who is a local actor in our community and someone who I've known for quite some time, and someone who I'm very glad that he made the drive over to my living room and is going to talk to us about his origins and all about theater, so I'm very excited about that. Yeah. If I haven't mentioned it already, my name is Jeff Tamakis, and let's get started. So, Tobin.
Yes. Hi there.
Hi.
The drive wasn't bad. It only got silly once.
Yeah, well, good. Well, I mean, that's seen through the Michigan viewpoint.
That's true.
You know, it was just a couple of inches of snow on the ground. Tell me about your, when did you start getting into theater and...
I kind of backed into it, to be really honest with you. When I was in high school, there was a theater department there. I was encouraged to try and audition for shows because my brother Todd was very active at the time in the high school theater program. And I went and auditioned for Of Mice and Men. I totally tanked. I could not speak in front of two people at the same time. Anyway, I should never have gone. I felt completely and totally humiliated and never went back in high school.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's true. And it was terrible. It was terrible. I could not stand up in front of people and speak.
Oh boy.
So it was a couple of years later, I had graduated from high school. Todd was working with the local community theater group, and they needed help backstage. And I had nothing going on except for going to work and coming home. So he literally grabbed me by the collar and said, "Come on, you're going to help me." Mm-hmm. So he dragged me to a rehearsal. I started helping build sets, and so I started working backstage for a couple of shows. And it was really fun. I had a great time, and I all of a sudden had all these friends I never had before. So working with them, and then they started to encourage me to come in and audition for one acts, which is an art form I think that's been lost. I really do. The little short 15 or 20 minute one act play, they're great for starting actors. And so I auditioned for a one act, got a role, had a blast because it was a comedy. We made people laugh. I made people laugh.
Was that the first time you ever made people laugh?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was on stage?
Yeah.
So you weren't known as the class cut up or anything like that?
No. I was heading the books, look around at the girls when they walked by, but they looked at me and I would quickly look away. So that was the first time I ever made people laugh. And I was like, this is incredible. I need to do this more. Mm-hmm. And the more I did, the more I wanted to do, the more I wanted to do, the more I wanted to learn. And so that was kind of the beginnings of it. Was back in community theater days, the old Wayne Westland Theater Guild, which sadly doesn't exist, but there's enough people who are still part of that group that are around in the area. So
cool.
Yeah. Cool.
So you started by doing one acts, mm-hmm. and you grew and grew and grew. Yeah. What was the first time you were like, I'm in forever?
I think it was. I don't know. It's been so long ago. I think it was Dracula. I was in a community theater production of Dracula, and I played Dracula. I played the Count, and it was the original Bram Stoker adaptation that Bela Lugosi was in before they made the movie. So it was full of the melodrama, full of the fun, full of that. And our opening night was on Halloween night. And the first 3 rows were a Girl Scout troop. And it was the best. It was absolutely.
And what part did you play?
I was Dracula.
Oh, okay.
I was a short fat Dracula. And it was,
well, Bela Lugosi was kind of a short fat Dracula too, so it's all right.
Yeah, so I fit in perfectly.
Well.
But it was a blast, and just that reaction, that visceral response of getting it from the audience, feeling it on stage, being completely and totally lost in what was happening. That was it for me. It says, I'm doing this now for the rest of my life. At that time, for me, because I didn't have any official training or anything like that, it was just audition.
Learning is doing.
And watching people who were far more talented than me, and just continuing to learn that way. I was also working a full-time day job at the time, so community theater was a good niche for me because I could work during the day and then be out until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when I was younger, and doing the community theater thing, and it was great. And again, the more I worked, the more I learned.
What was your day job?
I was a quality control inspector, and eventually moved into statistical quality control for General Motors in Ypsilanti, making transmissions.
Oh, so that's quite a different part of your brain.
Yeah. So and saw some of the best minds of our time turn to dust doing the same thing over and over again. So I decided that wasn't for me. But I spent 30 years there. I spent 30 years doing that, and the last 10 years, I decided that I couldn't do that anymore, and I had fallen into this statistical thing. So decided to go to school for it. Schoolcraft College was offering a class in it, and so I got my associate's degree, and General Motors paid for it. That was the best part. So I went back to school, got my associate's degree, and decided to transfer all of my credits from Schoolcraft over to Eastern to get a 4-year degree. And after my first semester at Eastern, doing IT classes and statistical classes, and I was bored to tears. And at the same time, I was still doing a lot of community theater. And I had just finished doing a production of Godspell, which was directed by Guy Sandville, who that was before he was the artistic director out of the Purple Rose. And he gave me all kinds of encouragement. I know everybody's production of Godspell is the best production of Godspell.
Yes, mine was.
Yeah, but we had a great approach to it. But working with Guy and working with a bunch of talented actors and exploring and digging and finding new ways of telling the story, I just said, okay, this is where I've got to go. So I did that show. Started getting understudy work out at the Purple Rose, because shortly after that was when Guy took over the artistic director role. And then school just became too difficult to maintain, still working full-time days and going to school at night.
Yeah,
and I've got to be at this place at this time.
There's a thing called sleep.
Yes.
That exists.
Yes, which I lacked. I also had a wife and a young son. He was a toddler. He was born in 90.
Holy cow! So let me get this straight. You're going to school. You were working a full-time job. You had a wife and a small child.
Yeah.
And you were doing community theater, and you expected to sleep somewhere during that time.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hi, I'm Jeff Tomakis, the only tri-certified teacher of the Michael Chekhov technique for actors in the world. What I love about this process for actors is how immediately effective it is in improving an actor's authenticity and dynamic presence on stage and on film. Whether you're brand new to acting or have been doing it for years, my classes can help you nail that next part or audition. For over 20 years, I've been helping actors improve, and I want to help you too. My next 8-week course for adults begins Sunday evening, March 22nd in Ferndale, Michigan, and is only $150. Invest in your process and yourself. Go to www.michigancheckoff.com to enroll. See you soon. Man!
So it was fun. Yeah, I had a bottle of Mylanta in my car.
Wow.
So
So you were doing, you quit school,
mhm.
and then what happened?
I kept getting a lot of work. Did a lot of things out at the Purple Rose Theater. I got my first actual onstage role there, professional onstage role in the very first production of Escanaba into Moonlight.
Mm-hmm. Who did you understudy?
I was understudying John Seibert, who was Reuben in the original production. And I also played the offstage disembodied voice of great-grandpa Alphonse Sodi.
All right.
Who was represented by a large deer head through a window that was controlled by Tricia Smith. She was one of the apprentices there at the time. So she was doing all the movements, and I was backstage with a microphone, and they had set up a little TV screen for me so I could watch Seibert, because my conversations were with him.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a blast. It was absolutely a blast. And there was no looking back after that.
Was this your transition into the professional
Yes.
world? Did you eventually get your equity card through Purple Rose, or?
Yes, I had worked a couple of years, and the Purple Rose went dark because they were doing a remodeling of their building. Basically tore it down and rebuilt it from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided, as partly fundraiser and partly to keep the name out there, to mount a production of Escanaba into Moonlight at the Gem Theater in downtown Detroit. And as far as I know, that is still the longest running straight play in the history of the city of Detroit. We ran for 18 months.
Yeah, and I think my wife was working box office for the longest running non-straight play, which was Menopause the Musical.
Yes. Yep.
Which ran for like close to 2 years.
Yeah.
It was crazy. I guess there's a big audience.
My sister-in-law made a good career, good money out of that. She did that show all over the country.
Wow.
And did a lot of it here in Detroit.
Yeah.
Number of people. Judy Deary
Yeah.
was in that production in Detroit.
The beloved Judy Derry.
So, but there was a lot of people. But I got my equity card actually working on the remount in Detroit.
So were you understudying again at that time?
I was a full-time understudy, and actually went on because I'm not sure how it happened, but Phil Powers ended up taking the role of Reuben, and they started filming the movie version of it up north. So Phil had a part in the movie, and a bunch of other people. So there was kind of rolling understudies, and I went on as Reuben, I think, for the entire month of July of that year.
Okay.
So it was great. It was incredible.
Wow.
So,
and the audiences were?
the audiences were spectacular.
Yeah.
They came in. I don't know if people are familiar with the Gem Theater seating. I don't know what they're doing down there anymore. But it was round tables, so you had a seat of 8, and everybody, it was kind of a communal theater experience, but we were packed every night.
So tell me about this transition you had from community theater to professional theater. What was the decision-making process? Was there a point where you're like, boy, I just don't want to do community theater anymore?
Well, it was a combination of things. I felt that I had learned as much as I could in community theater. I couldn't really go any farther because I don't want to say I knew everything, because I still don't, but I had learned from people enough where it was like, okay, this is just going to be the same thing over and over again. We're going to rehearse for 8 weeks, we're going to perform for 2 or 3 weekends, and then we're going to be done. And so I needed more. I needed something that was going to challenge me more as an actor, something that was going to challenge me more as a performer, and the next logical step up was to move into more more professional theater companies.
Mm-hmm.
The Purple Rose was the best for me because it was still local. I was still there out in the Chelsea area. Learned so much, and the same thing happened. The more I learned, the more I wanted to learn. I took classes out at the Rose. They had some great classes, still do, and really started coming into my own with them. And in 2006, so 10 years after I started working professionally and got my equity card, because I got my equity card in 96. Is that right? Yeah, it is right, yeah. I had reached 30 years at General Motors.
Mm-hmm.
My job at the time was going away. I was working on a certification crew. We had achieved our certification, and they said, "Okay, we don't need you anymore." So
congratulations!
Yeah.
You have executed your job perfectly, and now we execute you from the
right. Well, you know, my old boss used to say, you know, the job of every quality control professional is to put themselves out of a job, and we did.
Well, congratulations!
So thank you. Yeah. I was UAW retiree, and at the time, the UAW seniority rules were very much in effect. So I was going to get filtered back into the workforce out of that position, and I was going to end up on second shift working in some metal cutting department, which would have effectively ended my life. Because everything I did was at night.
You know, so you couldn't
act. I would never see my son because he was going to school, and it's like, okay, this is not possible. I can't make this. This is not going to work. So I went to and at the same time, the UAW and General Motors were starting to aggressively cut back on the workforce. So they were offering a bunch of incentive packages for people to leave. If you had your 30 years in, they gave you full retirement. Here's a crap load of money, retire, and you still get your full benefits. And then if you didn't have your 30 years in, there was some other formula. And if you had less than 25 years in, you got a lump sum, and they kissed you goodbye, and that was it. So I went to my UAW rep and said, so, you know, what are my options? And he looked through things as well. You have your 30 years in, you can retire. Oh!
Now, how old were you at that time?
I was 48.
That's a good age to retire.
I mean, I retired. I hired in right out of high school the summer after I graduated from high school, and had been there pretty much on day shift the entire time I was on at the facility, thanks to overtime, because they counted overtime differently back in those days. I had accumulated enough time, even though I didn't actually have my calendar 30 years in, I had accumulated enough time to be counted as a 30-year retiree. And by that time I was divorced. I had an apartment. I had just started dating my wife, Chris Purchase, and went to her and I said, I can retire, I can get full benefits, I can focus on acting full time, I can really start branching out. Because I couldn't really go too far away from the Purple Rose because they were within 10 miles of my house. Everybody else were miles and miles away, and I had to be up at 5 o'clock the next morning to go to work. So I really couldn't go out to other theater companies, and so this opened me up to do some things. And we looked over the numbers. She helped me look over some things, and I was like, okay, yeah, I can retire. So I put in the paperwork, I retired, and still have not regretted that decision. I really don't. I don't. I took a pay cut, but I recognized that I was going to take a pay cut. I have a part-time job that helps make up for some of the pay cut, and still I'm free enough to go out to Meadowbrook, which is an hour and a half or an hour away from my home, or try to go up to Flint, or now I can actually go out of state, which I haven't yet, but I have auditioned out of state, and be able to do those things, and free enough to do those things that I can actually, make a living doing is.
Yeah.
So.
That's great. Did you feel like free as a bird did you feel free for the first time in your life?
Yeah, I mean, it was very daunting, driving out of the parking lot for the last time.
So it's the kind of freedom like a cat who gets out
Yes.
of the house and is like, I'm free. Ah!
Exactly. Yeah. No, I did that, and there was a tradition where when you retired, you left your shoes in the parking lot.
Oh.
So I got out to my car, I took my shoes off, I left them in the parking lot, I drove home, not thinking, of course, that I had a gravel driveway. So it was like, okay, now what do I do? Okay, I'm going to take classes. I am going to avail myself to as many audition opportunities as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I have done those things, and I'm very, very proud of it. I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, you've always seemed like a guy who was very content with his life. You know, just the happiest. You can see the joy radiate from you when you're on stage. You're like you're having such a good time.
I do, and I love the people I work with. Working with you on Murder by Poe was a great experience. Watching what you do, watching what guys like Chris Cordy did, certainly Kelly Conlon, who was amazing, and being able to open myself up to soak that in was incredible.
What actors have you have been your most have influenced you the most? What actors have influenced you the most?
I'll start with Jeff Daniels.
Okay.
I've been directed by Jeff. He is a phenomenal director. He's very focused, but watching what he does, he is such a wonderfully understated actor, and a lot of the training classes that they've had out of Purple Rose, they follow his example, and I think John Lepper touched on it in his interview. Honesty, just play it, just be honest with what you're feeling on stage. He embodies that to me. John Leppard is another one. I've worked with John on stage many times, and Sarah Wolf. There's so many who I sit, and if I get to have eye contact and looking into someone's eyes and feeling what they're feeding me and giving it back to them, it's amazing to me. Working a couple of years ago, I was out with the Michigan Shakespeare Festival, which has blown my mind, was just an incredible experience, and these incredible professionals they have with that company. Same thing, the exact same thing. Looking into their eyes, living in that moment, and being inspired by what they do and what they bring to the table. And I hope to be one of those people one day. You
don't think you're there yet?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I hope I am for some people, but I hope to continue to learn and be that for more people as I grow older.
Well, for me, I too have some local heroes that I've always said, oh yeah, I want to be that when I grow up. And the incredible honesty on stage that they've shown me. You mentioned Sarah Wolf, the same thing. When you're there, you're in that world with them, and a good actor can suck you into the truth of the moment.
Oh yeah. I mean, I had the pleasure of going on as an understudy. I did a role at the Purple Rose for a play that Jeff wrote called Across the Way, and I went on. I can't remember the reason. I think that was during a filming of another movie that Jeff was doing. That people were doing the rotating understudy thing. Standing on stage and going toe to toe with Sandy Birch and Susie Regan. You don't have a choice. You're there. You have to be focused. You have to be in that. And looking into Sandy Birch's eyes and Susie Regan's eyes and spilling my guts about I ignored this guy's diagnosis. I was a doctor. I ignored this guy's diagnosis because I didn't want it to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And not a pin drop in the audience that night. And I was like, okay, I'm here. You know?
How do you approach a role? What would you say is your typical approach to any given role?
If it's a historical role, which I've had the pleasure of doing, I do quite a bit of research.
Mm-hmm.
I read about the people, the time, what's going on in that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a new role, I had the pleasure of performing in a new play last fall out at the Williamson Theater called The Safe House, which was more or less an autobiography of a woman named Christine Thatcher, who is a legend in Lansing theater, and her life coming back to Michigan, what inspired her to come back into Michigan. And I played her uncle.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no idea who this guy is. So chatting a little bit with Christine, bouncing ideas off of the two other actresses that were in the show with me, Karen Sheridan and Danny Cochran. And again, that same experience of looking into their eyes and getting it right back.
Mm-hmm.
Playing the action honestly. That's it. It's honesty is the whole thing. Mm-hmm. with something that you're creating, something that you're seeing for the first time. This is a guy who has been taking care of his aging mother, mm-hmm. and can recognize that his aging mother is starting to lose it. She's starting to lose her grip on reality. So he's been taking care of her, and he knows best, and he knows what he's got to do. And then in comes this woman who's going to change everything. Mm-hmm. And it's that fight for control. It's that struggle with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I always say, acting is not nice.
No.
And it's never about like two very nice people who are just saying, "Oh, whatever you want, I'll just be fine with whatever you want." Right. It's always, what are you as a character fighting for? Yeah. And that's what creates the conflict and the drama and everything else.
Yes.
So, you have something you're fighting for, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That control over how we're going to take care of Mom and that, and mm-hmm. Maybe she has a little bit of rose-colored glasses on. No, let me show you. Let me explain to you. This is what's happening. Don't take this. Don't take her at face value. Pay attention to me. Mm-hmm. And it was a great show. It was so much fun to do, and working with the two of them were great. And the whole experience out at Williamston was fabulous. Mm-hmm. And then Christine coming to opening night and watching her life with her family. She brought her family with her, and all these people, we would come up and went, "Oh yeah, you're my uncle. Oh yeah, you did exactly what he would do." It's like, okay. So,
great.
Well, thank you. I was very happy about that. But playing historical characters, it's still that honesty. It's mm-hmm. still that same honesty. I had the absolute pleasure mm-hmm. of playing Robert E. Lee. Mm-hmm. in a play called The Killer Angels for the Michigan Shakespeare Festival, and they, I know what I know from the surface, but I didn't want to put any spin on it. I didn't want to do this and this and this. So I found out information about Lee. I read a couple of books, mm-hmm. And then it was just play the action honestly. What was he fighting for? What was he doing? Mm-hmm. Why was he doing it? Okay, and it was an amazing experience playing him. People can agree or disagree about whether he was a traitor or anything like that. He certainly didn't feel he was, mm-hmm. and that's how I portrayed him.
Well, we're always the hero in our own story.
Exactly.
And, historical characters don't know that they're historical characters, mm-hmm. even if they're, very few people I can think of a few world leaders right now who might think that everything I do is important and for posterity, but it's different. It's different to know that what you're doing is important, that people are counting on you, but very few people actually say, "Oh, I'm living history right now," because that takes that takes you out of what you're doing, right?
It sure does.
And no one in Shakespeare knows that they're in Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. They're speaking heightened language, but that's how people speak in their world. So they are talking the way they're talking. Yeah. And I always think it's interesting to approach a historical role because you, as an actor, have to know. As an actor, I know this is Robert E. Lee, but as a character, it can't be Robert E. Right. I'm Robert E. Lee. It's got to be. Otherwise, what you have is a cliche.
Yes.
The cliche of Lee.
Yeah, and no one wants that. No one wants to see that on stage. Never. And the answer to that is to play it honestly. Just to play it
moment to moment.
Yep.